Honourable Speaker, and I thank those members of the House who have indicated their support for this important legislation. I do too. I'm all for it, and I commend our very effective and hard-working Minister for Police, Fire and Emergency Management, Minister Ellis, for his work, and also to remind the House that we've seen this bill before, and I supported it as strongly then, before the Parliament was unfortunately prorogued middle of last year. I'm grateful to see this kind of legislation coming before the House. I agree with those who say we need to have laws that keep pace with what's occurring in the community, not just technology, but also behavioural change that we are witnessing in our community. And I'll come to that when I address the matter of hooning. But also we need laws that keep pace with the realities of everyday life so that the community has confidence in our laws. How often have we as MPs had members of our community come to see us saying that for them, their experience of the justice system made them, as they walked away, feeling as though justice hadn't been served. The person who ruined their son or daughter's life, or the person who took away their car and burned it out and they didn't have insurance for it, they walk away with a sense that justice has not been delivered for me, for my family. I encounter that often. And I want to see laws that don't just serve a purpose for those who do the crime, and then we have a sense of punishment, hopefully some restitution, hopefully restoration and person going on to being a better person, but also the message that it does send in the community generally, the educative benefit. This is a really high fine. Guys, stop doing this. If we get caught, we're going to get into a lot of strife. That idea that the law sends an educative message to the community should not be lost on any of us. The Shadow Minister, I noted, made a very wise observation, I felt, about having cars that are clamped after a hooning episode, having them on public display. Again, what a message, a powerful message that could be sending to people in the Launceston Blocky route. Oh, that red Commodore, that one got banged up, it's still there on display. Because that's what people will be able to see and recognise as a consequence for a poor decision, one that put the lives of other people in danger. And the other is that we want to see the expectation being the same, that the rule of law should be honoured. The idea that we hear about, actually not enough, but we certainly hear about it at citizenship ceremonies, don't we? I think it's one of the terrific moments at a citizenship ceremony where we're reminded of the rule of law in this country. Many of our new citizens coming from places to ours where the rule of law is not the gift that we have in this country, where we peaceably choose our legislatures, we peaceably have changes in government, and there's accountability for people who break the law, where a politician or a senior wealthy person is treated no better than somebody from another part of society for an offence. They are nonetheless treated as equal in terms of being accountable to that same rule of law. That rule of law protects you, it protects your family, it protects your property, and it protects your ability to go about your daily business in safety and with confidence. And this bill takes meaningful steps to deliver on that expectation that our community do have and they deserve to have. And we know, unfortunately, that too often Tasmanians do need to think about the law when their lives have been disturbed by the actions of others, whether it's through dangerous driving, and hooning is dangerous. Road rage is absolutely dangerous. Intimidation or conduct that interferes with basic freedoms. And in these moments, the law has got to be clear. It needs to be well understood. It needs to be fair, but also strong enough to respond. And when colleagues in this House raise concerns about a person's ability to pay a fine, I'm not dismissing entirely where you're coming from, because these things must have a sense of proportion. But if you don't want to pay the fine, don't do the crime. It's pretty clear. It's pretty simple. Pretty obvious. And so I want to spare a thought, not on the basis of worrying about people who might not be able to easily pay for a fine, I want to spare the thought for the person who's the victim of crime. They don't get a shout out in this place anywhere near enough. People who live with disability, pain, loss and disadvantage because of the selfish, illegal actions of someone who's broken the law. And we have a duty to uphold, and in speaking in favour of this bill, I want to do my bit to uphold our obligation as members of Parliament representing our community and fighting for their interests. I do want to be frank about what is happening on our roads. Road rage isn't just an idea or an abstract issue. It's a real lived experience for too many people. And I think we see it as a spectrum. Obviously, there are minor, or I should say less severe, serious incidents of people getting angry behind the wheel, expressing frustration inappropriately, but it then goes through to the very horrific, unfair, cruel and dangerous situations that can also occur and which are being addressed as well in this bill. So there's the sudden swerve, there's the blowing the horn, the tailgating, the screamed abuse at traffic lights, which I saw only this morning walking here on Murray Street, and it's in its worst forms the deliberate use of a vehicle like a weapon, like an instrument of intimidation or harm. And, you know, just your average car, 2 or 3 tonnes of metal moving into the vicinity of the other person on the road, whether they're another motorist, motorcyclist, cyclist or pedestrian. The full spectrum of road users, including vulnerable road users. And Tasmania Police have had to rely on a patchwork of existing offences. The Minister dealt with this in his second reading. Negligent driving, common assault, destroy or injure property, to respond to these kinds of incidents. But we need the new offence, and we need to recognise road rage for what it is. It is a distinct, serious and often, not always, often premeditated form of aggression that puts lives at risk. So the bill does that, creating that standalone offence, applicable where a person drives or uses a vehicle or performs a driving-related act on a public street in a manner they know or ought to know is likely to cause alarm, distress, apprehension or fear, and where that conduct results in property damage, personal injury, a collision, a risk of danger or an actual alarm and distress to another person. And the penalty of up to 50 penalty units or 6 months imprisonment is absolutely proportionate. And I would be surprised if in the future this Parliament doesn't revisit those penalty arrangements and increase them. But introducing the offence now is what is the business before us. It's not intended to criminalise a moment of frustration, but to hold to account those who use their vehicle as a weapon, as a 2 or 3 tonne weapon while they're driving and behind the wheel. Now, time probably wouldn't permit me to read all of it, as I did in my last occasion addressing this bill in the previous Parliament. But the Minister brought up the very terrifying behaviour that led to a sentencing outcome in a Tasmanian court approximately 18 months ago. The sentencing justice referred to the episode as a terrifying ordeal for a Tasmanian family. And in summary, what the court heard was that what unfolded and the event which took place in May of 23 was a series of deliberate, dangerous driving manoeuvres, including overtaking at speed and clipping the victim's car, blocking the way forward on the road, also trying to access the car. And when that failed, the family's car, that is the victim's car, was attacked as they reversed and headed the other way. Then that was followed by an at-speed pursuit, that is the victim's car being pursued by the defendant's car, running them off the road in a dangerous circumstance with earthworks, and attempting to overtake them on double white lines. The judge or the magistrate took this very, very seriously in the sentencing remarks. And thankfully, a very serious sentence was imposed based on those other, if I can use this word, patchwork of other offences that were picked up. But it didn't capture the whole. Those offences individually cannot capture what we're doing here today by having a standalone offence that deals with road rage. And I, not being a lawyer, would not be surprised, though, if some of those other offences can still be considered where they're warranted. But, you know, that could be your car. That could be a member of your family driving, being treated and abused in that way. How would we feel if it was us or someone that we love? As members of Parliament, we've got to think this way because we're standing here representing those very people who in the future will be subjected to this behaviour. And if we can do one good thing, it's not just the tougher offences, tougher penalty provisions, it's also helping the community to recognise this is something I need to avoid doing. I need to be careful not to take these next steps because the law will catch up with me. Also, I think the Minister may have said this, certainly the Shadow Minister did, that it also gets included as a prescribed offence for the purposes of clamping and confiscation. That is a powerful additional deterrent. Look, as Australians, we love our motor cars, don't we? And we enjoy them. And for those who want a performance car, good on you. But look after it and treat it with respect, treat other road users with respect. But we know that people don't want their pride and joy to be clamped, much less confiscated and absolutely not forfeited to the state, which will lead to it being sold or crushed and taken from them. It's also worth pointing out that most people do the right thing most of the time on our roads. But driving is a very serious activity. It's not one that can be that we can relax about. Even a very experienced driver, as the Road Safety Advisory Council have often said, sometimes the most experienced drivers, that is the ones who have been driving for many years, sometimes can be less focused, sometimes can be technically less capable than a younger person who might have gone through a more dedicated and programmed driver instruction program. Also, I want to turn briefly to the broad issue of toughening up the penalty framework, in particular dealing with those maximums. They are just that, maximums. By the way, can I just add, as I had to remind a colleague member of this House in a different debate, we do actually have a number of minimum penalties with road and traffic offences. But in this bill, we're dealing only with maximums, in which case courts retain their role to exercise their discretion. That's as it should be, and nothing in this bill changes that. But maximum penalties do matter, particularly where our state, in some cases, are being shown up by other states, where we're out of step. And when Tasmanian maximums sit well below those of comparable Australian jurisdictions, well, that discrepancy itself, unfortunately, does send a message. It's the wrong message. And so I think that that's an important element of the bill. Just turning to a couple of those briefly, considering in the property offences, currently destroying or injuring property carries a maximum penalty of only 10 penalty units and 12 months imprisonment. Of course, imprisonment is used very cautiously by courts, but to have an offence of that nature carrying a maximum penalty of approximately $2,000 is out of step, totally out of step, by a factor of 5 being addressed by the government here. That increases to 50 penalty units in 2 years. That, of course, in financial terms is about $10,000, just over. And we need to deal with the fact that that has been too low for too long. For a homeowner whose fence has been smashed, whose car has been keyed, or whose small business premises have been vandalised, the law's current response is almost, well, it's just not good enough, and it borders on insulting. So the increase is to be commended. Just briefly on assault, I hate assault. It's dreadful. It's horrible. I've witnessed it in Launceston on the street. It's distressing for everybody, not least of which the victim. It affects children profoundly, creates fear. At present, a common assault carries a maximum of 20 penalty units and 12 months imprisonment. That gets raised in this bill to 50 penalty units and 18 months. It can be aggravated. For assaults in circumstances of aggravation, think, for example, of an assault upon a pregnant woman. No man lays a hand on a woman. No real men would ever do that, much less a woman carrying a child. I mean, it is so wrong, and yet it happens. So I want to be one of the 35 people in this place. I want to be one of those that stands with that woman and that child. It will never really be enough, I guess, but it's something to deter that wicked conduct, something that should never happen. But it does happen. It happens far too much. I know we agree on this. We may not all agree on the penalty units, but we agree on that principle, don't we? So for those assaults in those circumstances of aggravation, that maximum doubles not from 20 to 50, but in fact from 50 to 100 penalty units and 3 years imprisonment. In financial terms, that's about $20,000, just over, and 3 years in jail. You think that's too high? Don't place a hand on a pregnant woman. Don't lay a hand on a pregnant woman. Don't do the crime. If you think the time's too much, you think the penalty's too high, don't assault. Of course, the important element here is that we do ask our department, whether it's police or justice departments, to ensure that the community is informed about these tougher laws, so that men and women everywhere can know that not only was it always wrong, not only has it been illegal, but it's now tougher in terms of enforcement, and that the penalties will be much, much more harsh. Briefly to motor vehicle stealing, this one upsets me as well. I live in a particular place where I get to see and hear that from my home. I can see at certain places in Launceston where you can see the you see the motor vehicle lights, and you can hear the burnouts, you can hear the engines being artificially revved so high that the engine blows its block. So this is absolutely not a victimless offence. It affects often people on disadvantaged circumstances, lower incomes, because the vehicles that are the easiest to steal are the less valuable ones. I dare say no one member of this House's car has been stolen unless you left your keys laying around. Very hard to steal a modern car with immobilisers and alarms. And I've met with a family, and they feel very ripped off. The perpetrator of the person who stole this man's son's car faced justice and got the penalty and all of that, but the young son did not get his car back because he didn't have insurance. He was registered appropriately, he had his he had his MAIB premium under control, but he didn't have property insurance for his own car. And he missed out. He lost his car. He lost his wheels to work. And so increasing that from 50 to 100 penalty units, I applaud. Bringing that up to 20,200. I don't have much time left, but I'm very passionate about this. Briefly to Hooning, I just have 1 minute to address this. Hooning is a problem in my city of Launceston. It's been a recent problem illustrated in the media, but it's not a new problem. We've had the blocky route, and I say, long live the blocky route. I'm okay with the blocky route, so long as people are actually obeying the law. Quite proper to use the road lawfully, including if you're using what we call the blocky route. The problem is not the blocky route. The problem is not people driving from A to B and enjoying themselves. The problem is speeding, racing at lights, and putting oil on intersections. I can barely believe I'm saying it, and that is what's been happening in Launceston. Tasmania Police, the Minister will be pleased to know, have been nothing short of magnificent. but there's only so much they can do, which is why I also applaud the use of other technology so that the police officer doesn't have to personally witness it but can use other technologies such as drones. I commend the bill. I thank the Minister and I thank those who are also supporting it.